New York City's fire department has a new leader.
To lead this department is the greatest honor of my life. But I do not mistake this ceremony for an achievement, but a deeper commitment to those who do the work.
Lillian Bonsignore taking on the post, bringing her decades of experience working as an EMT and serving as chief of EMS operations. What she plans to bring to the new role as she tackles staffing issues, pay concerns, and more. New York's congressional primaries heating up. Michael Blake challenging Congressman Ritchie Torres for his seat. Why he says his district needs a change in leadership. And doubling down on subway safety, Governor Hochul vowing even more protections to New Yorkers' commute. But are riders seeing what they want to stay safe? We hit the rails to ask them when PIX on Politics starts right now.
This is PIX on Politics with Dan Manarino.
And welcome to PIX on Politics, everybody. I'm Dan Manarino. And as the Mamdani administration takes shape, his appointees look to make their own mark in their new roles as well. We've been introducing them to you. Once again, there's a new leader now for the FDNY. Mayor Zohran Mamdani naming Lillian Bonsignore the city's fire commissioner. Now, she is the 37th commissioner of the department, a career EMT. Bonsignore also served as chief of EMS operations from 2019 to 2022, as she is the first uniformed woman to hold the position. And today, she's going on the record. And the commissioner is joining me now. Commissioner, great to have you here, and congratulations on the appointment.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let me talk to you, right? Because obviously you've been involved in the first responder world for quite some time, right?
I have, yes, I have.
Over 30 years. Now, you're going to hear this a lot, right? The complaints from people who said, well, now we have another fire commissioner who has never been a firefighter. But your predecessors in the past haven't had FDNY experience within the actual being a firefighter. What do you say to that criticism and concern?
I think it's just simply absurd. You know, I'm the 37th fire commissioner in 160 years of the fire department, and 2/3 of the fire commissioners had no firefighting experience. 31-year veteran of the fire department. I've worked and loved this department my entire adult life, and I've led EMS through a global pandemic and was on the ground during the World Trade Center attacks. I think people just don't understand that a commissioner's job is not to fight fires. The greatest duty of a commissioner is not to command the fire, but to empower and protect the hands that fight it, right? So that means that I'm here to support the EMTs, the paramedics, the firefighters, and civilians who really do the hard work in the fire department. I'm not there to stand there and put out fires. Right.
If there's a 5-alarm fire, which there's been a few of in the beginning of this year, right, that got some high attention. The fire commissioner isn't the one setting up shop saying, okay, here's what's going to happen.
That's correct. And I don't think a lot of people understand. Right. We're a very large fire department, and we're led primarily by a civilian position. Even if I were a firefighter in the past, I wouldn't be fighting fires in this role. None of them have. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a different structure, I think, for people to understand. But, you know, we're here to do this job together. We have an extraordinary leadership team in operations that have well over 500 years of collective experience, and they're going to continue to do great jobs.
You mentioned your time in EMS, right, and leading the EMS Bureau through COVID-19, something that the mayor really highlighted when he named you as the commissioner. And you have a lot of experience in that world. How do you bring that now to this role as commissioner?
Well, I was only retired 3 years, so I'm barely gone. So, you know, running EMS or leading EMS in New York City is a very big job in itself. And we were faced with a global pandemic, one that nobody's ever seen in our lifetime. So, you know, we do have a lot of relationships that have already been developed as far as with City Hall and politicians and all the other folks, all our agency partners. And yes, there's a new administration, but there's still a lot of experience left there. And I'm able to, you know, assign my experience and understand the pulse and the culture of this job because I've lived it for my entire adult life. So I think what I bring is a deep understanding of the problems and concerns that the fire department are facing and a way to translate that in a firsthand way.
Yeah, and speaking of EMS, they're currently working without a contract, right? And your predecessor wrote in an op-ed on his way out that while the FDNY doesn't control EMS pay, that they deserve a monumental raise. And that is the world you come from. So do you believe that they do deserve a raise, and how do you get them to a contract?
Yeah, you know, EMS is critical in our city. They protect and save lives for a living. Over 1.6 million runs a year, and they deserve to be paid fairly. I can say that I wholeheartedly support parity. And, you know, although the commissioner doesn't sit at the bargaining table, I'm comfortable saying that the time has come to start paying our emergency medical professionals a fair and living wage. I think, you know, we're in crisis right now, and if we don't take an opportunity to fix this problem, EMS will collapse at some point, and that is no good for anybody, especially New Yorkers. Yeah,
I think it's important to also for people to understand, for many who may not know the roles, the commissioner doesn't set the pay for EMS. That's a union and a contract negotiation that goes through the city offices.
That's correct.
And so let me talk about, while we're discussing EMS, ambulance response times has really been an issue. In 2025, it was 11.5 minutes, and the union is placing the blame on low staffing levels, and we're talking about what would happen about a collapse if they didn't get a raise. So how do you get those numbers for response times down and the numbers of EMS up?
That's a really great question and a big question. Response times are led by lots of different things. Staffing is certainly one of those things, but public education also is a really critical piece of this. So we're going to be engaging in some public education campaigns. Like I said, our call volume is over 1.6 million a year, and it is overwhelming. You know, it is a lot to respond to in our city. So we're going to be talking about how we should best use 911 as a resource in our growing city. And I think when people start to understand that, we could start cutting down maybe on some of those calls and encouraging people to use urgent care centers for non-emergencies, maybe their doctor or telemedicine. And I think that is good for everybody, including the patient who ends up sitting in an emergency room for quite some time. So, you know, we'll start talking to the public and making sure that we can make it very clear and offer them opportunity to do other things. And certainly, you know, work with our partners in the hospitals to get our ambulances out sooner. Lots of different factors lead into response times, but we're on it. It is a priority for us.
But you want to see those obviously come down.
Absolutely. You know, our job is to save lives for a living, so we want to get to you as very quickly as we can. But we need to be going to those high priority, life-threatening emergencies in order to make that real difference.
You know, and we're also talking about this during a time, or taping this interview, where it's day 5 of a historic nurses strike. And obviously you work hand in hand with so many of these hospitals around the city. What do you want to see happen as an end result here for these nurses who are continuing their on the picket lines?
Well, certainly nurses are a critical piece of our healthcare system in New York City, and we work hand in hand. I do hope that they find their way to the table and end up with an agreement that they can get behind.
You know, you talked about your way around the inner workings of the department, and you were retired for 3 years. You were involved with the FDNY since 1991, but you were in retirement. So do you miss it?
Not yet. I've only been here 2 weeks, so I don't miss retirement yet. I'm really enjoying getting back in the game and talking to all the people and seeing the first responders. I've spent some time in the field going to firehouses and EMS stations and fire department buildings, seeing our civilians. And it's just so energizing because these people are so amazing, and they would put everything on the line just to save a life or protect property. It's just rejuvenating, I guess I could say.
And for you, for the moment, what are you feeling in the moment? Because this is something I'm sure you never thought would actually happen, that you'd be the commissioner. So what does this mean for you?
This is just such an incredible honor. Like I said, I've spent the better part of my entire life loving this fire department and this city. So to be given the opportunity to sit at the helm of this is incredibly important to me, and I want to do a good job for those people who trust me in this position. I think we're going to do great things, and you know, I think to stand behind and support the rescuers that put it all out there for New Yorkers is just something I take as a complete honor.
Commissioner Bonsignore, I appreciate your first interview being right here on PIX and Politics. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, when we come back, the 2026 midterms already keeping us busy. Many New York Democrats in Congress facing challengers. So next up, I'm speaking to the man challenging Congressman Ritchie Torres, Michael Blake. He joins me next. PIX and Politics back in just 2 minutes.
You're watching PIX on Politics with Dan Manarino.
And welcome back to PIX on Politics, everybody. So there is never a shortage of news these days, but in case you missed a day, we've got you covered. So here are the top political headlines of the week. Governor Kathy Hochul delivering her 5th State of the State address, a crucial one as she enters a re-election year. She discussed her vision for universal child care statewide. She also touched on the concerns over immigration enforcement in the state and her plans to expand major transit projects right here in our area, as well as continued her commitment to safety in the subways. We'll have more on that later. Governor Phil Murphy across the Hudson in New Jersey for the last time as governor had his State of the State as he prepares to leave office next week. The Democrat touted his top accomplishments, including doubling the minimum wage, job creation, banning cell phones in schools, and crime reduction. And city council members came out to protest this week after one of their own staffers was detained by ICE. He was taken in during a routine immigration hearing. We have more on that on our website, pix11.com. And of course, not a week goes by where we are not talking about the 2026 midterms, especially the congressional races in New York. Many New York Congress members facing challengers, including Congressman Ritchie Torres. Former mayoral candidate Michael Blake is primarying him, saying that district needs a change. And Mr. Blake is joining me now. Welcome back to PIX on Politics. Good to see you.
Always good to see you, Dan.
Let me talk about why this seat at this time. You once ran for Congress back in 2020. The last people may remember as you were running for mayor. That didn't quite work out for you. So why this seat this time?
Because Ritchie Torres has been a failure for our community. When we think about what has to happen and how we have to raise wages, reduce cost, and reimagine the Bronx, that's why I'm running for Congress. Ritchie Torres has been a failure when it comes to immigration and siding with ICE and being very clear that he voted for the Lake and Riley Act that would increase deportations. When I'm saying that we have to protect our immigrants. Ritchie has been wrong when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East. I am saying very clear it's a genocide. Ritchie will not state that. When we think about affordability, I've actually passed bills to pay our businesses on time. Ritchie has not done that one time in Congress. And so when we think about what's at stake right now in this moment, we need real Democrats, and that's what I'm presenting to the South Bronx.
Okay, let me break down each one of those things you just brought because there are many of them, and they are, affordability being first and foremost, right? What is your plan for affordability then that you have not seen Congressman Torres address?
Well, let's talk through housing is the critical cost that impacts many of our families. I've said very clearly we need to end credit scores, increase income limits, and also have a local median income when we think about our housing applications. If you do those three things, you change the game immediately for giving someone a chance. Also, when we think about child care, one of the reasons why Mayor Mamdani and I cross-endorsed each other is we talked about universal child care. Now we're going to see that happen in the city. It has to get funded in a real way on a national level as well. Ritchie Torres has been in Congress now 5+ years. He does not have one bill at all where he is the prime sponsor that is addressing affordability. Not one that has passed and become law. So when we think about what's at stake right now, to actually reduce your costs and raise your wages, I'm actually giving people a vision around that on our Bronx plan, and he's not.
You mentioned Mr. Mamdani and the mayor. He has already endorsed a few races, yours not being one of them yet. Do you want his endorsement?
Of course, and it's one of the many reasons we were excited to cross-endorse him in the primary and the opportunities that's there. Look, he's a transformational figure, and the excitement that exists right there. And when people decide in New York 15, you have a choice. You have someone in me who actively supported Mayor Mamdani to make sure he was elected and supported throughout the campaign. You have someone in Ritchie Torres who not only went against him in endorsing Andrew Cuomo, but then called the challengers against him the Mickey Mouse Party. Well, no, we're being very, very clear. We have something we're going to show in the community. And if you want someone who's an ally to Mayor Mamdani, my name is Michael Blake.
Let me talk about affordability just one more time here with a discussion about taxing the rich, right? And I know it's a state issue or a city issue, but that's something Mayor Mamdani wants to do. Would you support a taxing of the rich to pay for some of the things to make things more affordable?
We need to. And when we think about it, it's a resource allocation. At the end of the day, when we think about a budget being a moral document, then we have to be clear that we have to pay for the things that we deserve. We deserve better education. We deserve more affordable housing. We deserve our children to be protected. We deserve our immigrants to be protected in our communities. In order to pay for these things, yes, we should tax the rich and make it very clear, as opposed to Ritchie Torres, who just voted on a bill that would increase funding in terms of what's going on to Israel, in particular the government itself, that actually would have restrictions to Palestinians and actually would not protect our immigrants. So when we think about a budget being a moral document, taxing the rich gives us the opportunity to pay for the bills and make sure that the poorest congressional district in the country, Dan, actually supported in a way that we have not been.
You're targeting Mr. Torres and his support of Israel as something to hold against him, tying him to AIPAC. New York Post reports that you took down pro-Israel posts and attended AIPAC events from 2014 to 2017. So Did you have a change of heart when it came to AIPAC?
Absolutely. And look, I think
so
many
you admit
people
that
don't.
You went to those events in 2014 and 2017.
I did, and let me be very clear. I'm an ordained reverend who says very clearly that Jesus was a Palestinian Jew, and I understand at the time there were things I did not know. Many people won't be honest with themselves. There's propaganda and given to you at AIPAC that you don't realize, and then you realize it afterwards. You have to make a change. When you see what is happening and that there's a genocide that is occurring, when you see what's going on in terms of the destruction and not supporting the community, yes, things have changed, and I've learned from that. And I have to be willing to acknowledge that, and any good leader will be able to communicate that. When we think about where we're at right now, also is the personal dynamic. One of the individuals that were killed, World Central Kitchen worker, helped us in the Bronx. It becomes very personal for us when you see a community not standing up in a real way. Now, let me be very clear. We have to make sure that we're addressing, yes, anti-Semitism and Muslim hate. We have to make sure we're standing up for all of our collective communities. But in the same way someone should not call someone anti-American for standing up against Donald Trump, standing against what's going on in Bibi Netanyahu does not make you anti-Israel and anti-Semitic.
I don't mean to bring up the New York Post again, but they did have an article about rabbis in the Bronx who support Ritchie Torres and accused you of stoking anti-Semitism in your campaign kickoff video, which you apologized for in that video. Was it a mistake, and how do you address some of the anti-Semitism claims that are out there? Being
critical of a government does not make you anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. And individuals have to make that collective decision. Now, we have to be very clear on where do we stand. How do we make sure that our synagogues, our masjids, and our churches are safe havens against the rise that's happening in our communities? How do we also say at the same time that you have a humanitarian crisis and that we're not going to be silent about what's going on to the Palestinians? At the same time, that we're not going to allow for a rise in anti-Semitism. You can address all at the same time. And I think too often what's happening is that we're being pitted against each other and saying you have to just take one side and ignore everyone else. When we think about where Ritchie has stood, Ritchie will not acknowledge all communities. That's his own acknowledgement, that's his own rhetoric, that's his own decisions. And I'm saying very clearly, to represent the Bronx, you have to represent everyone. And where do you see yourself in terms of the Democratic spectrum? And the reason I ask this is because there's been so much talk lately with what exactly a Democratic Party or a Democrat stands for. If you're far left, if you're moderate, Mamdani is a Democratic Socialist. So where do you fall on that spectrum? Well, you know, we always say in black community, not all skin folk are kinfolk. And so not all Democrats are being real Democrats right now. So let's be clear about this. There's a major difference between me and Ritchie Torres. I actually have a vision on how to help people address affordability. He does not. I'm actually protecting immigrants. Ritchie Torres voted for the Laken Riley Act, but that will increase deportations. I've been very clear that we have to hire black women who've been fired by Donald Trump. Ritchie Torres not communicated that at all. So at the end of the day, we have a choice to make. Do you want to stand with someone in Ritchie Torres who is actually supporting Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans, or do you want to have a real Democrat? And my name is Michael Blake, and that's why I'm asking for your vote. But what kind of Democrat do you describe? Are you a moderate? Are you a progressive? Well, I'm a Democrat that's not going to stand up, not going to support for Donald Trump. You know, Ritchie Torres literally is taking positions helping Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans. How does someone rationalize at all the Laken Riley Act, which Ritchie Torres voted for? He expressed gratitude for ICE and then provided more funding that would go against our communities. That's not a real Democrat. That's nonsense. Ritchie Torres is the same person who literally has disrespected Mayor Mamdani in every possible way. But I'm asking you. I'm not asking you what he is. I'm asking what kind of Democrat are you? What's a real Democrat? A real Democrat is one that's going to make sure that we have affordable housing. A real Democrat is going to make sure that we protect our immigrants. A real Democrat is someone in me who went to all 4 sites to stand with our nurses in our strike that's happening right now, where Ritchie is not. A real Democrat is actually going to say that, yes, a genocide is happening, and I'm going to address what's happening in terms of anti-Semitism. A real Democrat is going to say that we can stand up for our people, and at the end of the day, that I'm not going to succumb to Donald Trump. So when we think about what's happening right now, the reason why I've been successful as an assemblyman for 6 years, the reason why I was able to be with President Obama, be successful there, the reason why I was a vice chair in the DNC, and the reason why we're going to bring change in New York 15 is that I am not going to be silent what's going on in New York 15, unlike Ritchie Torres. A real Democrat is actually fighting for Democrats and not actually sucking up to Donald Trump like Ritchie is. Michael Blake, I appreciate you coming here to talk about it. We'll talk to you throughout the campaign, okay? Good to see you. Appreciate you. And still to come, everybody, Governor Kathy Hochul adding more safety precautions to the subways even as crime numbers decrease. We're going to talk to riders to see what they want on their commutes when we come back. Welcome back. So this is the time where everyone sets new goals for the year, right? And one of the goals for us here at PIX on Politics is to hear more from you at home. And this week's State of the State address, Governor Hochul reaffirmed her commitment to safety in the subways. Here's more.
On our subways, we're committed to maintaining enhanced police patrols. We'll install more platform barriers at 85 additional locations and expand our elite mental health units to get people in crisis off the trains and into care.
But is that what New Yorkers want to see? Our Giovanni Diaz headed underground to talk to commuters about how they feel taking mass transit.
Governor Hochul is announcing that she's going to keep police patrolling through the subway system, also adding barriers near the tracks and also including more mental health units across our system and the stations. How do you feel about that? What is your take?
I'm fine with that, especially the mental health angle.
Do you think those measures would make you feel even safer?
Absolutely. That over policing.
More cops is a good thing. You know, they're law enforcement. They're here to protect us. They're here to serve. I think they're a great thing. I'd like to see more of them, more people supporting it, and so I think all the better to that.
Are there any measures that you think would be helpful to make you feel even safer?
A little more police presence, I guess, would kind of, deter people from trying anything.
Governor Hochul is saying that she'd like to add barriers by the tracks and also mental health units across subway stations. Do you think those measures will make you feel safer?
Definitely barriers. I know there's been a lot of instances where people were being pushed on the tracks. I know some states, like I think DC has the glass barriers, so they only open once the doors open, so there's no it's just an extra precaution.
So that would make you feel safer?
I think so, yeah.
All right, and thanks to Gio for heading out there. And look for us in your neighborhood, okay? Sound off on the latest political topic. We'll have one each week. And with that, we'll be right back. And let's take a look at the week ahead. Mikey Sherrill will be sworn in as New Jersey's governor. The inauguration taking place at NJPAC in Newark instead of the State House in Trenton. There will also be a celebratory ball held at the American Dream Hall. You can watch our full coverage on PIX 11+. And that'll do it for another episode of PIX on Politics, everybody. Very busy year ahead. I'm Dan Manarino. We'll be here for you every step of the way. Enjoy the rest of your day.